Hi.
Hey, Dan.
Real quick, so this is Desiree. She's from Withers in California. Technical council inspired to do the landscape design for us. What our goal this evening is to actually get some direction from the council as to which landscape theme you guys would like us to begin design, so we can actually get some construction documents prepared and we can start to do these designs.
That is definitely what I'm excited to get started on. So I'm Desiree Harbaugh. I'm one of the associates at Withers and Stanford. My boss, Lacey Withers, is going to be here at any moment. The traffic was a little heavier than normal. So we wanted to revisit a few of the things that you did see in our last presentation about the tree analysis. And we have gotten in our arborist report, and Lacey's probably better to speak at it, but there are some clear directions from the arborist on this, on what to do about some of these trees, specifically the liquid ambers and foliage. So as you know, our scope again are all the medians in Baldwin Park. So just the whole stretch of Ramona, Badillo, Baldwin Park Boulevard, Amar Road, and some, some of the little triangles along the way on Ramona. So one thing that we talked about, I had a special meeting with maintenance, was incorporating where possible, and there's really probably only 3 spots along the project that we could actually incorporate some maintenance turnouts, and they were very supportive of that because it is very complicated sometimes to ensure their safety of the kind of industry. But Lacey, hi! Lacey's here! So I keep going. Well, I was just starting in some of the things we wanted to touch on, like the arborist report and my special meeting. So, okay.
You were filming. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So where do you want
Is
to
there a did you go through any of those things?
Very
Yeah. Okay.
Now we needed to talk. I know we needed to talk about the situation with the trees.
Okay. Last time we met, we all kind of went through it quickly, and then we got to the plant palettes, and everybody went, "Oh my gosh, these are, we really need to look at this and study it." So I made handouts, and I thought maybe we could look at it that way and pass it on down, and it helps a little bit to have them in front of you. I think we can. The biggest focus right now is that which of the trees that are out there do we want to keep, and do we want to continue to monitor and plant if we want to enhance those. If we want to add some more of those trees that are out there, we want to make sure that those trees are compatible with the future water restrictions and such that the entire state of California is dealing with. So the majority of the trees that you have out there right now are crepe myrtles, parrotwoods, camphors, sweet shades, the pines, and liquid ambers, magnolias, and ficus. And the bulk of what's planted on Ramona and Baldwin is actually, is actually the Canary Island pines. And the good news is that those are very drought tolerant, so those will survive with minimal water. The liquid ambers, we got the arborist report back, and the liquid ambers are being attacked by a fungus that is spread by that sharpshooter bug. I don't know if you are all familiar with that, but it's what's been killing all the oleander all over California. And so the recommendation from the arborist was to take out the liquid amber, which is kind of painful because those are an important tree on that. So that's something to think about and talk about, because that is a pretty it's a pretty big impact, and you're going to get a lot of community feedback on that. You know, people don't like to see mature trees taken down, but it's a disease that's spread by these pests, and it's not curable. So that's why we've lost all our oleanders pretty much all over Southern California. So they are in your liquid ambers, and what happens?
Can I interject just a question?
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So, I mean, with this, how long, I'm sorry, I don't know, but how long have they had an infection, whatever it is that's attacking them? And what's the lifespan, say we decide not to take them out?
Okay.
What would be the impact?
What I don't know how long they've had them, but usually it's a matter of the pests come in when things are stressed. And you'll notice that in your own yards, is that when things get drought stressed, we call it, they start getting susceptible to bugs or diseases. And so the things that are vulnerable are the higher water using plants, because we're on our 5th year of drought. So each winter when we do get rains, all those things get flushed through, all the toxins and the minerals and salts and things that build up in the soil over the years get flushed through. But when we don't have any rains, like right now we're on our 5th season of drought, that's all built up in the soil. So this winter we might get a reprieve, and we might flush all that junk out of the soil, and the trees will have a big burst of new growth. So you might buy yourself some time. So it is something that could be scheduled over over time. As you're doing your renovation projects, there's 2 ways to take on tree removal: is have a master plan and do it a little bit at a time, or do it all at one time and deal with it and have everybody upset, and you have to deal with the public on that, because it's concerning to the public, and they get really upset when they have to. I'm sure you guys have experienced that. So you can do that 2 ways. So it's not something that they have to be taken out immediately. Now there are trees out there that are dead that do need to be taken out, and I believe that Karen's been working on that already. So because that is a safety hazard when things are dying and things can go off. And I do believe, Desiree might know this better, but I do believe that there were a couple of trees that were called out as safety hazards for eucalyptus. So,
yeah, that's closer. The only eucalyptus are in one of those traffic triangles.
right. So anyway, we do have that report, and you can take a look at that and see what it says. But it's really kind of a what I'm asking you to do today, I guess, is to just think about how you like to approach that, and if you would like to take that task on a little at a time, which is sometimes less painful, as you go through the medians, you take out the ones that are the most diseased or the weakest, and like I said, you might get a reprieve over this one, because you're supposed to have one week, so you get a lot of that. So that's something to think about. But the good news is the bulk of what you have out there is Canary Island pines, and those can handle drought and are doing very well, and they also can be susceptible to what they call a bark beetle. But she didn't call any of that out, so I think we're good on that. And that comes from drought stress as well. But a lot of the magnolias out there are already dead, if not dead. And so, yeah, which is just, they just can't handle any drought stress at all. They're really a water-loving plant. And some of the lesser trees, or the lesser impact trees, I should say, are crepe myrtles, carrotwoods, campers, and sweet shades. The sweet shades there's not very many of them. They're likely not going to do that well with less water, but the other 3 are going to hang and do quite well. Because we're not eliminating water altogether, we're just minimizing it. So as far as the site analysis goes, these are the streets that we are have been brought on to take a look at and redesign and work with the existing and bring on the new. So we've got Baldwin Park and one up at EO and Lauren. And as part of that, we have those little triangles too in some parkways. And what we did was we went through and we assessed each of the streets, and we assessed it based on what the trees are out there, like we're discussing what's healthy and what's not healthy, what's working and what's not working, what is residential district, what's commercial district, and what that street is relying on, because we're only doing the medians for the most part, but the streetscape involves both parkways on either side and the median. So what we do to the median affects the opposite sides of the street. So we assess everything on that, on each of the streets. So you'll see, we'll say no side parkways, no tree wells. Center median is really all you've got in this stretch of Baldwin Park. And then you'll see our, what we're calling our parklets. That some of these little triangle areas, like the Sterling Way intersection, can be quite beautiful when reflected. You can see along Ramona here, we have now this was in the spring. So we had actually green grass. It looks very different right now. We've been through the summer, and we've stopped watering we've been required to stop watering the turf, so it looks a lot different. But just so you know, we've gone through each of these streets and assessed it. We have plans with lots of notes inside, basically what we call a site analysis, where we go through and we mark which trees are doing well and the impact of the trees on the surrounding adjacencies. And we're looking forward to doing something in these little traffic islands. So these can be quite attractive. You can see where it changes to the view, but again, the big impact is those Canary Island pines, thank goodness. Now there were some troubles with these camphor trees that were noted on the arborist report, and they were saying that the roots were girdled, and it's just something to keep aware of. Her recommendation was to keep the heads smaller because the root system is like twisted up, it's too tight, and what that came from was a root barrier. And I don't know, you've probably heard about root barriers or what. A lot of root barriers were put in improperly for many years, probably a decade, where they'd circle the can when they planted the tree. And what happened is the poor roots just came and turned around and around and around, and they were never able to. Those roots spread out, and they don't necessarily go down, but they spread out, and they usually are within the top 2 feet of the soil. Some of the deeper rooted trees will go down deeper. But
and the situation on these was the root barrier was installed right at the
can.
So it literally, all of those trees their root systems contained to about this space. And
so the trouble with that is that when a big wind comes along, there's not a root system that's spread out to support the upper canopy. So her recommendation on that was to just keep after those, keep them thin, watch them, keep the heads down, because you don't want them spreading to a 30 or 40 foot tree because they will blow over in a big wind. And one of the other things that we're going to take a look at is the entry monuments on either end of Ramona and Badillo, and we're looking at the materials and the proposed materials and how we can unify these things, because there's a lot of rock cobble and stamped concrete in some of these medians and in the median noses, so that's something that we're taking a look at as well. What we'd like to see here is gateway trees. So we'd like to, think about something really wonderful, so that when you come in on Ramona and you come in by these monument signs, you feel like you're in a different place. Well, we have different palettes, so I think we'll get into that. But what I call a gateway tree. So it's a tree that might be a very big Canary Island pine, or palm tree, or a giant oak tree, or something that really makes you feel like you're in a different space. And you've got the beautiful wide medians in these areas too to support those big trees. So that's good.
Do you have suggestions for entry signs like along other streets that we can sort of better look at?
Well, yeah,
entry signs than what we have.
We do monument signage as well. That's not part of necessarily this scope, but we definitely do that. And it's a great idea. And I don't know, your planning department might already have that, but it's a great idea to have a signage program and have take that on and have what I call family of signs, so that you have different sizes and monuments and but it's important. It's kind of like when you do your home. It's really important to have a master plan, so that when all of a sudden you get money to do the bedroom, you're matching what happened in the other end of the house, or, you know, that kind of thing. So cities are the same way. We want to have a master plan, and the signage program is exactly the same. Do you want a master plan or a family of signs that have a hierarchy of importance, wayfinding or monuments or gateways, that kind of thing. Now, one of the things we're also looking at is,
I touched
oh,
on
you did that, okay. So important to note that the edges now, we want that safety area, and we want, it has to be DG. Did you go into that because of the water?
No.
Right now, one of the requirements for the state is requiring us to keep sprinkler heads 2 feet away from any impermeable surface. So impermeable surface would be asphalt or concrete, or asphalt or concrete, I guess, or grouted pavers or something like that. So what we've been doing in all the medians, most of us landscape architects, is we're putting decomposed granite in on that edge so that the maintenance crew can still get in and around, but we're still 2 feet away from the edge. So we meet the requirement. We also meet our safety. We meet our state requirement, but we also provide our maintenance crews with safety areas. So that's what this is about. So that's one of the things that you'll see that will come up on the new median treatment.
Is that so they can walk along the edge, or?
That's so they can walk along the edge.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they had to hedge something,
It's like 2 feet.
right?
Usually 18 inches.
Yeah.
18 inches.
Yeah. They run about 18 inches, and then you have a 6-inch curve, and then the sprinkler head can be cheated in another 6 inches or so you can reach your 2 feet from the impermeable surface. So what we passed out earlier were the 4 plant palettes, and this is what our office has put together. We have 4 different palettes that we'd like to get your feedback on. Now some of them can be mixed and matched. So if there's particular things that you are really attracted to, we can work on that. But for the most part, again, plants come in palettes, and they're usually based on climates and water needs. So if you think about what grows in the desert, or what would grow in the forest, or what would grow at the beach, those are different, ecologies are different palettes. So when we go to put together a palette for an area or a project, what we try to do is work with that same concept of plants that require the same watering, same sun exposures, that kind of thing, same climate. So our main staple that we're working with here is the pines. So we have 4 different approaches. The first being, we're going to keep the pines, obviously, on all of them, but if we take all those liquid ambers out, now I don't know how familiar you are with all the terms, but the liquid ambers are the tall trees that give you that gorgeous fall color that have been in California, probably since the 50s. And they were planted a lot. They're a very hardy tree, but they need a lot of water. So they're struggling now. All the older trees are struggling.
And usually as a result of, they are terrible surface growers.
Yeah.
That's one key problem or constraint on the medians is that the liquid ambers especially have a lot of surface roots that it's going to be a challenge for the guys digging the holes.
Right. So that's something that we're going to have to deal with. But that original planting concept was having these big stands of evergreen pine trees with a deciduous fall colored tree. So what we did was we replaced that liquid amber fall colored tree with either a western sycamore, which is a California native, lower water needs, or something like a zelkova. Now, there's something called WUCOL's Water Use Classification of Landscape Species. So each plant has a plant factor or a number, and it's been classified with the amount of water that it needs. So we're following the medium to low water needs. These 3 of the palettes are medium to low, and then the 4th palette is low, which is the driest of all the palettes, and what people would maybe refer to as desert. And a lot of us are reluctant to go that low because we get a lot of flack. Some people love that sort of Arizona look with succulents and cactus and some very, very low water use natives, boulders and DG. It can be a very beautiful look, but it can also turn a lot of people off. So I always like to put that in there because it is the most water conserving palette. Well, it's in your packet, but I like to give you some alternatives too. So
I have a question. The Zocova and the Western Sycamore, the Western Sycamore will lose a lot of its leaves, right? Like
Yes.
around this time?
yes, we call that deciduous.
Okay. And then the Zocova, does that only turn that color like in the spring
Fall.
or fall?
It's a fall, yes.
So we would have a tree that's either fallen or a tree with no leaves, right?
Right. And that's what you have now. So right now you have the pine trees with the deciduous tree, which is the liquid amber, and they lose all their leaves and they turn fall color. So this proposal is similar to what you already have now.
Okay.
That would be it. So we're the way we approached it was, okay, well, let's go with the original concept that Baldwin had the designers on this project had, and that was what they did, was they combined, which is a typical palette for designers that will put together an evergreen tree with a fall color or a deciduous tree. So that's what's here. So this is what we're calling our grasses approach. Now, what we think looks good with that combination is mimicking the green carpet effect, which is we took the turf out, but we're still using grasses, we're just not using the mown turf grasses. So we're looking at a combination of, not all grasses, but kind of that still that blanket approach of a single color, so that you get that continuity and that sort of quiet street, if that makes sense. So you have these beautiful sycamores above, mixed with the pine trees, and then you understory planting would be these grasses.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, I really like that. It's different than just, like you say, just a long grass. It gives it a different,
Yeah.
yeah.
And just to clarify, these are the ones that are below,
These are medium to low water.
But these are not the lowest.
These are not the lowest.
Well, I think it needs more of a drip irrigation system.
Yes. So we won't be doing any overhead watering, remind?
Well,
Maybe not.
we-
That's Desiree's
we
area.
can, but it will be one that qualifies for the state requirements and is still low volume. So there's ways irrigation designers have around.
And the irrigation equipment has changed dramatically in the last 15 years. Huge changes. So that, gone are the days where you turn the sprinklers on and all the water would be up in the air and it would just dump water on. And they're very, very different now. Very different systems. So just if you didn't even change the plants and you just changed the irrigation heads, you would save, the irrigation systems, you would save huge amounts of water. But we're required now to not have turf in the median, so we have to change them anyway. But just updating the irrigation systems makes them even more instant.
Can I ask you a question? The grass on the left side at the bottom.
Yes.
Tell me about that grass. Does it look like this year round? Or
Yes.
It does.
That's called Lamondra breeze, I think. Is that a breeze? Breeze species, and it's a little clumping grass. It's about this tall, and it just spreads out like this, and it's about this wide, and it looks like that year round.
What's it called?
Lamondra breeze.
Basically, it's not like grass that you have to cut
You
it off.
do not
It just
mow
kind
it.
of sits there as
Right.
a plant,
Right.
right?
A little like, are you familiar with agapanthus? But it gets a flower, a blue flower or a white flower. They're everywhere. And most all the developments have them. It's a little like that, but without the flower. It never gets a flower.
Because that fountain grass, it looks like that certain times of the year, but I don't see.
Right. That's right. That's right. Right. Okay. Okay. So we're almost. Okay. So the next plant palette would be the subtropical plant palette. The Canary Island pines, even though the pines, when we think of them as forest trees, they're actually native to the Canary Islands. So if we look at that, it's actually what we call a subtropical plant. And also subtropical plants would be some palm trees, like the queen palms. So this is another approach that we would mix the Canary Island pines with the palm trees, we could use the big date palms as our gateways. So those would be the gateways as you're coming into the city. And then the queen palms in the middle there would be the trees that would be mixed in with the Canary Island pines. And then the understory to that would be a more colorful palette because it's a subtropical palette. So it would be along the lines of ground cover bougainvilleas, ground cover lantanas. We have red hot pokers, euphorbias, camellias, star jasmines. And again, these are medium to low water use classifications. So they look like they're high water users, but they're not. But it's a much more colorful palette.
Yeah, are these colors year round or just?
Nothing blooms year round. Some things bloom a lot, like what we call, we're going to look at something, the next one is an iceberg rose. It almost blooms almost all year round, but nothing blooms all the time. They kind of go in cycles. So in a colorful palette like this, we try to mix in things that some that bloom in the spring and some that bloom in the summer and some that bloom in or some repeat bloom. So we try to do that. We call concession or succession blooming. Because that's important. So, and we also work with heights. We have what we call foreground, middle ground, and background. And in the median, we never really get background. We stick with foreground and middle ground because we want everything lower. But, so we
as far as like the heights of plants.
Right, the heights of plants, and we work with the textures off one another, and we can talk a little bit about that too.
And do you train our staff how to maintain?
As part of this program, we do have a maintenance manual that goes along with this. So any of these grasses or things that they're not used to taking care of, we would be making recommendations on what to do in different seasons. And most of this stuff is actually pretty low maintenance. It's not like grass where you have to go out and mow it every week. It's a much different program. It's probably...
Or even have it on a fertilizer schedule.
Right, we don't fertilize these things for the most part. So you might go in, so the maintenance should decrease. When you do go in, you do a bigger effort, but you may only go in 5 to 6 times a year, as opposed to every week. Yeah. So our third palette is what we call a Mediterranean palette, and we're talking about crepe myrtles, which you probably are all fairly familiar with. It's a big summer blooming plant, small tree with beautiful white bark and a lovely structure, trunk structure, and maybe with olives. We're thinking maybe olives now, so because olives are a strong Mediterranean plant. And then as an understory, we're looking at mixing in some of the lower classifications for water, because we have to have a balance. If we use a medium water, we have to use more low water. So we go back and forth between mixing these palettes because we actually have to meet water usage requirements. We have charts that we have to fill out here. That's Desiree's job. It's gotten much more complicated
Our
than
maximum
just
allowance.
picking pretty things. Maximum water allowance, right. So we're mixing in some succulents, some agaves, buddleias. There's what I call the iceberg rose. It's like the perfect bloom plant that blooms almost all year round.
Which one?
The iceberg rose, the white rose.
In and out has them.
In and out has them. I mean, they're like unbelievable. They
Those
bloom
are all year round?
Yes.
well, just about.
Yeah.
They probably out of the 12 months, they probably bloom 9.
What's the name of that one?
Iceberg rose. And it's what they call a landscape rose. It's not the old kind of hybrid tea rose that you have to trim, and you don't do any of that. It just blooms, it drops its blooms, it reblooms, it drops its blooms.
And what seasons would that cover?
Pretty much everything but January, February.
Usually the heavy rain season is when it's not blooming, because
Right.
because it drops the blooms really easily. Rain rains.
January, February, it slows down.
I definitely want one of those.
It's a great plant. I mean, people in our world are a little bored of it because it's so great that it went everywhere for about 15 years. But I bring it back in because it's an amazing plant.
And it's very hardy. I mean,
Yeah, you can't.
goes without
kill it.
effort.
Now, how about that one? Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna ask, so when you talk about pallets, I mean, that's your recommendation in terms of combinations. It's like, for
Yeah.
us to take a plan and pick and choose, maybe ruin that pallet that originally we
Right.
have, correct?
Right.
So basically, what you're asking is to pick the pallet already created, is there
For
options?
the most part, but then we're gonna add to it. So there's lots of flexibility.
Okay.
There's lots of flexibility. So if there's something that you're leaning towards that you really like, a look, we take that and then we add to it. So there is some mix and match, we just wouldn't go, right. So there's
I thought that purple is color green. It's
Oh, that's
lavender.
beautiful.
That's actually called a buddleia or a butterfly bush, and that's it's totally beautiful. Now, it's a little bit wild, so for that particular plant, we wouldn't do as much as like we would do with the iceberg rose, because we sort of know that what happens with that one, it's spectacular, and we want to use it, but we don't want to use it for the whole medium, because it's a little too wild. That makes sense. It's soft. It's like a soft. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, and we struggle with this as designers, is that we're driving by at 40 miles an hour. So the impact of driving by it, maybe not tonight, but right, or 20, or maybe even 60. But, okay. So when we plant like that, we plant longer drifts of a single species, and we plant for impact of that. So it's a different planting than you would in a smaller detail sitting garden. So this is a quieter palette. It's not going to be as dramatic as the subtropical, where you go, wow, look at that orange, like a chrome yellow or something like that. So it's a little bit different. So there's neither one right or wrong. It's just a taste. It's very much a taste.
Can I ask a question, if you don't mind? From the subtropical, and we're talking about those colors that you're mentioning, but since they don't bloom all year long, at some point it'll be sort of dry and dead, correct? But looking at the Mediterranean, that one has, because we're talking about the white rose that you're saying, this pellet, I don't know, I'm asking questions, does this pellet have more of a possibility of looking prettier all year long because of that bloom lasts longer, or
No, not
it'll look dry
necessarily.
at some point or another?
Yeah, not necessarily. I don't think that any of them will look dry except for this one. This one will look dry. I don't think you'll get that dry look on any of them. There'll be a quieter look. Because while one thing like a bougainvillea may have stopped blooming, but then the lantana blooms almost all year long. So lantana, which is, do we have lantana?
Yeah.
We have
There.
lantana, which is yes. It blooms just as much as the iceberg rose. Almost as much. So
And you already have some in
and you have some in your meetings already.
They're using a lot of them along the freeways.
They're a great plant.
Sort of nice, yeah.
It's a great
Like on the
plant.
210 freeway going towards Rancho, you see some of them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hybrids. Okay, a lot of hybrids. So this last palette.
Out of curiosity, the first, that one, is that the yellow? Does that stay like that all year round?
No,
No, and actually, that tree is right
downstairs. You
Right
have
outside of the
one.
parking structure.
Oh, yes, you're
Those are
right, you're
Halloween
right.
rays.
So this is what they do in the spring. This is their spring bloom. Most trees bloom in the spring. Liquid ambers will bloom a little bit more into the summer. I mean, crepe myrtles will bloom a little more into the summer. But for the most part, most trees bloom in the spring. And so this palette is the very low to low, so very, very little water. This is what I would term an Arizona desert landscape. It can be gorgeous, beautiful, it's just a very different look. So some people absolutely love it. Some people do not. They're turned off by it. But you can see there's a little grass. There's a little grass plant. That little grass could be used on any of the other palettes too. So there's a mix and match thing that we can do. Okay, 1 minute. So this is the lowest water use plant. Now Desiree touched on this a little bit. There's actually, like I said, the irrigation is super important, but it's very much a specialty, and this is her area. She's a certified irrigation designer. and a lot of the equipment, there are rebates. So, rebates for. So you put in the new equipment, you get checks back from the MWD or the water surveyor. Desiree and I prepared a couple of different sort of. Shall we put this? Let's put this in here.
Would it be
We touched a little bit on, actually, let's just pull this up a little bit. We touched a little bit on how we might approach the layouts. Now, this is right at the entry.
So the 605.
Where the monument is.
Right, where the monument is. So there's a couple of different ways we can approach it. This is sort of the more typical, thinking about, okay, let's hold on both sides. Thinking about how you're driving by at whatever speed you're driving by. You want a big impact, so you're going to put a whole lot of plants together. You're going to do a big drift of a single species so that you really get a big impact. So the way you can see how there are different approaches to that. If we did grasses, we could sprinkle trees throughout the middle of the grasses. We could do something more geometric where we could do stripes, which we did something similar actually to this down in Ontario, where we do these big swirls of plants. So the textures and the colors become very important, how they play against each other. So these are just some different techniques.
What do you have in there?
We don't have
That's
anything.
to be determined.
Yeah.
But
Depending upon what plant palette we pick, then we start working with the shapes and the different layouts. So oftentimes we would do all of this in our office and we would never even bring this to you and we would just show you guys. But because you showed a lot of interest early on and you wanted to be a part of the renovation, we thought it would be kind of fun to bring you along. So if it's too much for you guys, you don't have to have an opinion.
So you're just showing us what the design would look like.
possible layouts, right? This is the swishy bands. This would be the geometric banding. Those are set at a 45-degree angle, much more rigid. And this is really based on pockets. So we would just plant pockets and then leave it mulch or DG probably under most of the trees because the surface rating is so bad.
Which we're probably going to have to do anyway.
Yeah.
We can't plant right under those Canary Island pines.
What's the time scale we're looking at? Anyway,
Dan, you want to help us with the time schedule?
For construction of this,
Yeah.
well, as soon as we have construction documents, we would put it into you and go out to bid, and I'm guessing this would be probably 3-month construction.
Mm-hmm.
So you're hoping to get them to pick a couple of the pallets that they like,
So that
they can plug it into some of these.
Yes.
It's maybe longer than 3 months because of the
Bring
traffic.
back those concepts.
That's
to sales
usually-
and
Okay, so we're gonna pick the pallets at this time, like,
Because they'll
right?
have a hard time.
If you're
If you're ready.
So how many different pellets
So
do you
and
have?
this, well, you have the 4 planting
The
species.
floor.
This is just
Because
sort
of
of
time constraint, let's
how we
get-
might approach it.
because of time constraint, let's go ahead and go up to the screen and pick out the pallet.
Okay. And like I said, you can say whatever you guys think is fine too, if it's too much.
Okay, so let's go number 1.
Okay, let's go back.
Or do you want to just point out like, yeah, who's,
As far as the meeting tonight, we just,
Okay,
The pockets and more
the
DG.
more naturalized with DG and, okay.
We've done a lot of
Okay.
parkways with
Yeah,
attachment.
it's nice.
well, can I just start kind of like the last one, the drive one? If you're gonna read, we can just kind of set that aside. If anybody
All right,
like
then remove the last one.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I'm not
No
gonna do
drive.
that. The drive, that's too dry.
It's too dry for you guys.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's hard to go from grass medians to very dry.
I do like a little bit of the Mediterranean. I like the Mediterranean because of the white
Soft.
rose that you said and the purple one that you pointed out as well. These are the-
Iceberg.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, keep in mind, the biggest impact is the trees. So how do you feel about the trees? Maybe we can work with the trees first and then go to the understory.
You know, I'm having a hard time making a decision right here on such a short notice.
Oh, okay, so I see, pick the trees first, and then,
And then the
And then-
I really like that middle.
You like the crepe myrtle?
I like the pomegranate. I think, we have one back here, and I think that would be, I think that tree is really nice.
It is, but that really is on that dry,
The
very dry
yes,
landscape.
correct, because that's
Which-
like in Arizona.
Is exactly what is downstairs
Yeah.
also.
I also like the
Right.
myrtle in the sense that, and I know it doesn't bloom all year long, but it gives it color, at least in the summer, gives it that, gives it a little bit of
Well,
color.
could we pick different ones for different mediums, or do we have to
Yes,
have?
we
it
can
in
have
a
different
whole
streets,
city?
Baldwin can be different than Ramona, and
Well,
Bonita
that
can
might
be.
be interesting, is to have different, different landscapes and sort of use it as a talking piece, you know? We decided to do Ballpark Boulevard like this and
It's
Ramona like this,
educational
or,
as well.
yes.
And we were thinking that that would be kind of nice to do in those triangles, in those little parklets. We could almost do demonstration
Yeah.
gardens saying that that's what this is, and just talk about this whole approach to like watering
Conserving.
requirements and how you balance your water needs.
Yes.
And interpretive work, we could do that in the parklets. So yeah, we can take a different approach. And also if you would like us to make recommendations, if you give us some ideas like you're doing right now, the plants that you like, we can go back and take a stab at saying we think because, we think that Baldwin Park should be this way because it's a residential and such, and we think Ramona should be this way because it's a such and such, we can come back with that kind of approach as well.
I would like to see the recommendation. I don't know, I just feel like we're
I
not
think
experts
Ramona
in.
should be colorful, at the entrance by the 605 freeway, and over here in the downtown area of Baldwin Park, I think they should be rather colorful. And then I think like Ballpark Boulevard and some of the other streets, I think that,
Be a little quieter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's my
Because I'm envisioning
tendency as
getting
well.
off the freeway instead of looking at that dead grass right now, the
Right.
monument is. It would be really nice to see, something colorful,
Mhm.
something pretty there. It's just people are traveling either on Ramona, from Alani, or however they travel, or getting up, or on the freeway or whatever.
Mhm.
That would be kind of a nice,
So we'll
welcome to Baldwin Park.
Ramona, Baldwin Park?
Baldwin Park. Pardon?
Ramona and Baldwin Park?
Yes,
The
for the
major-
monument
Yeah,
is-
the major corridors, that's what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's, I agree with
We
that.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Ramona could be bolder
Yes, when I'm
and
entering
Baldwin
the
Park
city.
could be quieter.
You think, oh, this is really pretty, So, I think that Ramona is a main thoroughfare for us.
Okay.
So,
How do you feel about the palms? What's your reaction to the palms? Because
Well, we have
people
palms.
usually have strong reactions. You have a lot of palms on
yes, we
Ramona.
do.
Yeah, that's where it came from, was that we went, wow, there's a big palm influence on Ramona, surprisingly.
I'd say we keep them, I think it looks good,
Yeah.
just put, dress up however it's on the bottom, kind of like things are.
You could use some of I've seen like the ponds, and I think, Susan, you had a picture of either on Riverside or some
Yes.
town a while
With the
back,
flowers
where
on
they
the
have
bottom.
bougainvilleas, on the.
In a
on the-
circle.
Yes, in a circle, like around the palm trees, and it looked
It
really
goes,
nice.
yeah, it's very bright and pretty.
Was that
It's-
Riverside?
You know, Jan, did you have that picture I sent you? I text message to you.
Yeah, you did, I don't know.
It's, it wasn't Riverside, let me see. What was I? I don't know how many people it was, the convention center now.
Probably, that would make
Yeah,
sense.
right? Uh-huh. And the palm trees, and then they have like these, it was
Yeah, there's a lot of palms in there.
in a circle. Look at it.
I would say to take into consideration flowers that are too difficult to, pick up, to maintain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because, what happens is we have a beautiful, and it starts to dry out, and it starts to create like a dry flowers, and stick to the ground, and, that kind of thing too, and it becomes difficult to maintain. So, I would say Vermilia is a beautiful flower, but once it starts to drop, I think it could be.
Yes and no, because there's so much wind going by, especially on Ramona, created by the cars.
Then we're gonna have to wrap it up or continue after.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have.
We do have,
Mr. Clark
yes,
here,
the attorney as well.
counsel.
So what, you wanna bring it back, okay?
Do you want us to take a pass at it from your feedback today and then
Yeah,
bring back
bring it back to the
a
next
concept?
Yes.
Great.
And
Thank
then
you.
decide from there. All right.
Sounds
Very
good.
much, very nice.
All right, so at this point, we're gonna go into a closed session, so I will ask all those, please,